are right at 7 o'clock, so I'll call tonight's city council meeting to order. And Karen, could you have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Valento. Here. Councilmember Erickson.
Here.
Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here. I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, we have an agenda before you. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Can I make one change?
Sure.
I'd like to remove 6Q from the consent agenda. to vote
Well,
on
that's a
separate.
different motion, though.
Let's do that as part of the consent
Okay.
agenda.
So I second the motion to approve the agenda.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and our agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. We have open forum at every council meeting. It is any interested party's opportunity to provide feedback on any topic of their choice. I will note, we do have 2 public hearings this evening. You are welcome to, at the front end of the meeting, give us feedback as part of that open forum if you would like, or if you want to hold your discussion until the public hearing. We do have a public hearing on the street right-of-way vacation and also the zoning text amendment for wetland banking. And so if those are the topics, you can either wait till the public hearing or speak now. And Karen, do we have anyone?
One person, and it is on the
Perfect. Mike Burr, and again, you're welcome to speak now or if you want to speak as part of the public hearing, either your choice.
I'll wait.
Okay, very good. Is there anyone else that would like to speak during open forum? All right, seeing no one come forward, we'll close open forum and bring meeting back to council. And council, for your consideration is our consent agenda. We have on tonight's consent agenda items 6A through 6R. Councilmember Roberts, I think you have an amendment.
Yeah, I would like to remove 6Q from the consent agenda.
Very good. We have and is that a motion?
Yes.
So we have a motion for items 6A through 6P and then 6R, removing Q. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and our consent agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is consent agenda item, or former consent agenda item 6Q, and that is for the 1148 Broadway Avenue West, Mr. Car Wash Development Agreement and Access Easement. Is there any discussion on this item? Not hearing any discussion, I would move that council approve the development agreement and access easement as presented in our consent agenda. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain,
Abstention.
1 abstention. Very good. We will move on to our regular agenda, and our first item this evening is our annual audit presentation. And Kevin, I'll let you kick us off.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight I have Jackie Knowles from Bergen KDV. She was the head audit manager and helped complete the 2022 audit of the city's financial statements. So in your agenda packet, and also I put in front of you as well, there's 3 documents: the annual comprehensive financial report, the communications letter, and then a report on the schedule of federal awards, and also a report on legal compliance and internal controls. Jackie will be going over the results of the audit and summarizing those documents, and if you have any questions for her or myself after her presentation, we'd be happy to answer those. So Karen, if I could get her presentation up on the screen, and I'll hand it over to Jackie.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Welcome, Jackie.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. As Kevin noted, I'm going to be going over a summary of the results of our audit and then moving on to a summary of the financial operating results for 2022. So the main purpose of our audit is to provide the city our independent auditor's report. And in that report, we state that management is responsible for the numbers or the amounts in the financial statements, and our responsibility as auditors is to express an opinion on the financial statements based on the results of our test work. This year, we're providing an unmodified or a clean opinion. It's the best that we can offer and the same that the city has received for the last several years. What that does is it provides assurance that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. The city's financial position as of December 31st, 2022, and all of the activity that occurred within the year. The Office of the State Auditor also requires us to report on compliance with Minnesota state statute or Minnesota legal compliance, and we did not have any findings there. We did have just one internal control finding this year, our only finding. It's the lack of segregation of accounting duties, which probably sounds familiar. I do want to note that it is at a reduced level this year. Last year it was at the highest level. This year it's at a mid-level finding because we are recognizing the controls that the city has in place in its various transaction processing procedures. But ultimately, much of the control, the access, the review responsibilities still lie with the top finance staff members, so there is still a risk with the internal controls overall. So then with that, I'll move on to the financial results for the year. So for 2022, council approved a balanced or a break-even budget. Revenue for the general fund was projected at $10.667 million, while expenditures were authorized at the same amount. Actual revenues for the year in the general came in at about $13 million, so about a $2.35 million over budget variance, and that was primarily related to the ARPA money or the federal coronavirus relief funds. Those were received by the city in 2021 and 2022, and they were all spent during the year, so they were recognized as revenue in 2022, but they weren't included in the budgeted amount. Expenditures equaled about $11 million. That's an over budget variance of about $344,000. The largest variance was in economic development expenditures related to temporary planning services. In addition, the general fund transferred out almost $2.3 million to the water fund for future capital infrastructure needs. So the fund balance decreased about $234,000 this year as a result of 2022 activity. And this next graph shows the general fund for the last 5 years. You can see that the fund balance has gone up from 2018 to 2021 before decreasing that $234,000 in 2022. There are some components of fund balance, but the bulk of fund balance is called unassigned, which means it's available for spending on any purpose. It's a little small, but that unassigned number in the green is about $5.944 million, and we like to look at that amount to see where it falls within the city's fund balance policy. So the city's policy calls for a minimum unassigned fund balance equal to 50% of the subsequent year's budgeted expenditures, and that $5.9 million figure is 52.3% of what was budgeted for 2023, so in compliance with your policy at the end of the year. Looking at revenues, you can see that revenues jumped quite a bit in 2022 compared to previous years. And again, that was the spending of the ARPA money at the federal coronavirus relief funds this year. The remaining increase was primarily within property taxes due to an increase in the amount levied in the general fund. Looking at the city's revenue sources for the last couple of years, you can see how the spending of the ARPA money shifted the city's general fund revenue sources up to 21% of revenues in 2022 compared to just 5% last year. Looking at expenditures, in total, they were up about $1 million from 2021 to 2022, and there were some variances across most of the city's programs or functions. Almost half of that increase, or about 8% increase, was seen in public safety due to cost of living increases, step movement. Also, there were some increases in required fire supplies and safety gear purchases, as well as the amount of state aid that flows through the city and gets passed through to the Fire Relief Association. That was up as well. Economic development expenditures were up about $233,000 due to temporary planning services, hiring of additional staff, and TIF-related expenditures. Capital outlay, that was at $0 in 2021. That was up to almost $137,000 in 2022. That was related to the Castlewood Golf Course Improvements Project. And then there were some inflationary type increases seen in culture and recreation and public works expenditures, kind of across the board. Fuel, salt, rental costs, supplies, those types of things were up across the board. And then one program that did see a decrease in expenditures was general government, and that was due to no overtime and a reduction in temporary professional service costs. So looking at the spending allocations for the last couple of years, overall very consistent. In the general fund, a little bit of a shift from general government to outlay and economic development due to the changes discussed on the previous slide, but the city's overall spending allocation remained consistent due to the city's budgeting approach. So then we'll move on to the enterprise funds, and first up is water. Operating revenues did decrease about 2.6%, and that was due to a decrease in usage, while operating expenses were up about 8.9% across wages and benefits, supplies, repairs and maintenance, utilities, so seeing the effect of inflationary increases in the water fund. But this fund is still reporting operating income. Operating income did exceed $400,000 in 2022, so this fund continues to build up reserves for future capital needs. And the sewer fund also saw a decrease in operating revenues, again related to a decrease in usage. Operating expenses were up in this fund about 2.4%, and that was primarily related to an increase in the monthly disposal fees. This fund reported operating income of about $418,000 this year, so this fund also continues to build up its reserves. And then my last graph takes a look at the city's tax capacity levy and rates for the last 5 years. So overall, the levy has been increasing at a slower rate than the tax capacity over the last 5 years, resulting in an overall decrease in the tax rate since 2018. And that concludes what I had prepared. Take any questions from anyone.
Thank you, Jackie. Council, what questions might we have about the audit report for either Jackie or Kevin? There's a lot of information contained. Any questions? Just a follow-up question on the noted internal control deficiency. That's been a repeat comment for multiple years, is that right? You mentioned it's gotten better. Is that a reflection of more people, more process? Can you just speak to the improvement?
Yeah, probably more people, more consistent people, and just internal controls being implemented and followed as they were designed. Still a risk related with that top person handling some duties and being able to access things. But yeah, I would say consistent people and really following things how they should be.
Understood. For an organization of our size and with our staffing levels, would it be a reasonable goal to eliminate that comment completely in the future, or are we just in a spot where that is the nature of the beast? I feel like we've fallen into the latter, but I don't want to not do something that maybe would be recommended.
Right, it would be really difficult to eliminate it because you'd almost have to have that top person not have access to anything and just really be reviewing, and that's not really practical in a city of this size.
Kevin might encourage that, but maybe not practical. Okay, helpful. Other questions or feedback on the audit report? Requested action tonight is to approve the audit report, is that right?
Mayor Bain, yes, it is. We usually just have a motion to approve the 2022 presentation and audit results.
Any questions before we do that or follow-up discussion? All right. I would move to approve the 2022 audit presentation and results as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? That motion carries. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Our next item this evening is 7B, Resolution 612-2304, County Household Hazardous Waste Cooperative Agreement, and this was sent to council under a separate cover this afternoon and also is printed on the dais in front of us. Abby, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Bain, members of the council. Since long before my time, I think a number of years, the city has been in discussions with Washington County about their desire to create a new Northern Environmental Center household hazardous waste site. We've been in discussions with the county this last year as the county has looked to refine their plans and to purchase property near the city's parcel of land that is at the kind of intersection of Highway 61 and Headwaters Boulevard. Tonight before you is a cooperative agreement that outlines the roles and responsibilities of both the city and the county in moving forward with a potential land swap of land that the city owns for land that the county owns. So as shown on the map in the staff report, and I apologize, I don't have it right in front of me at the moment, but right at the intersection of Headwaters Boulevard and Highway 61, the city owns land. We would be considering exchanging that land for land that is at the corner of Highway 61 and County Road 50 or 202nd Street. That would allow us to combine lands that already exist, that are already city-owned, our compost site, for a future potential consolidated public works campus. The county, as part of their project, would end up building their household hazardous waste site, the environmental center, the roads going into the site, extending the utilities, and all of that is outlined in the agreement. What this agreement really does is it memorializes at least the future intent and will help the county move forward as they look to do a future subdivision project and a site plan approval process through the city. They really can't engage in those until we kind of say, yep, we know you're going to do this on our land, and this helps memorialize that. So tonight from the county, we have Greg Wood, the Building Services Director, and Eric Jalowitz, the Capital Projects Manager. They're going to provide you with a brief presentation and any questions, any answers, and then also in the audience tonight as support, our Commissioner Fran Miron is here just as for other additional discussion if needed.
Very good. Thank you, Abby, and welcome.
It's coming. Nope. There we go.
There we go. All right, good evening, Mayor Bain and council members. I would like to thank you for allowing me to present to you tonight. My name is Eric Jalowitz, and I'm the Capital Projects Manager for Washington County. Also in attendance tonight is Commissioner Fran Miron, who represents your district on the county board. Today I'll be providing that brief presentation on the proposed Northern Household Hazardous Waste and Yard Waste Project. Tonight we'll review with you what services are being proposed in Forest Lake. I'll talk about the site that we are looking at for those services, and then finally provide the anticipated schedule for completing the project. So this image here shows our current household hazardous waste facility located in Woodbury. It was built in 2009, and the program has been highly successful. With the success of the facility, the county board recognized the need to provide equitable services on the northern end of the county. Planning has been ongoing to fill that need since 2017, with a goal to have all county residents within a 25-minute drive to these services. County staff and the City of Forest Lake staff have been working collaboratively over the past few years to determine a possible location. The partnership has been extremely positive, and it has led to the proposed agreement that is in front of you tonight. As we look at the current operation in Woodbury, looking at this picture, on the right side of the picture is the office side of the facility, which has offices, locker rooms, conference rooms, and a free product room, which I'll explain a bit later. On the left is the operations building, where dropped-off materials are stored temporarily prior to shipping out for responsible disposal. And then in between is the drive lane, where public will pull up in their vehicle and staff will unload materials for processing. So the proposed facility we are looking at in Forest Lake would operate the same way as the one you see here. So what is accepted at the facility? Mostly it's household hazardous waste, which are things like paints, stains, paint thinners, automobile fluids, aerosols, fluorescent bulbs, batteries, pesticides, fertilizers are all common examples. We also accept electronics, which would be like old TVs, computers, cell phones, and microwaves. We do accept household sharps and organics, such as food scraps. And then also bulk recyclables, which are aluminum, copper, paper products, the same things that you see as in home recycling, but we can accept much larger items at this location. So all of these items are accepted from all Washington County residents and residents of adjacent counties with reciprocity agreements at no cost to the residents. The items are processed. They're determined if they can be reused. If items can be reused, they are offered in the free product room. And if they're not reusable, the items are processed and responsibly disposed of. A few additional services that are offered are shredding events for destruction of household documents, which those events occur periodically. The free product room I mentioned, where items that can be reused are placed for the public to take at no cost. And then there's also tours offered for schools and other groups for educational purposes. So just to give a quick idea of the volume of items that we collect, in 2022 at the Woodbury facility, we collected 1.6 million pounds of household hazardous waste, 1.3 million pounds of recyclables, 1.3 million pounds of electronic waste, and over 200,000 pounds of organics. So those were all taken out of the waste stream properly and disposed of properly. To give you a little bit of an idea of what we've seen up in this area, earlier this year we did a 2-day remote event in Forest Lake at the Transit Center, the Washington County Transit Center, and we collected materials from over 1,100 drop-offs that day, or in those 2 days. So also being proposed on this site is the yard waste transfer program. So currently there is a yard waste drop-off site operating in Hugo under a temporary lease. With the addition of the household hazardous waste facility in the northern part of the county, we look to co-locate a permanent yard waste site with that facility. The proposed site we're looking at in Forest Lake allows for both of those functions on the same site, which is a great benefit for our operations. So what is the yard waste program? It is a drop-off of household yard waste, including leaves, grass, branches, stumps, again at no cost to residents. There is minimal processing that occurs on site, which is only chipping of tree waste. And there's no composting on site. All items are transferred off-site for those purposes. We would be open April through November and at times after any large storm events when that would be necessary. So just again, to give you an idea of the volume, in 2022 at the current site in Hugo, there were 19,000 drop-offs from residents and 4 million pounds of yard waste were collected. Just taking a quick look at the proposed site. As you see in this diagram, Highway 60 runs north and south on the left side, and then intersecting at the bottom is Headwaters Boulevard. So the Washington County Service Center, Library, and Transit Center are located directly across Highway 61 from this site. This creates great synergy for county services. Not only is it convenient for public needing multiple services, it also is highly efficient for our county operations. Headwaters Boulevard would be extended east across Highway 61 in this proposed plan. This would include signal modifications and also turn lanes to enter and exit the site. We would also include a pedestrian connection to enter the new site along the new proposed city street. The facility you see here is proposed at 22,500 square feet, which is the same size as the Woodbury facility, with identical services that we have at Woodbury, other than Woodbury does not have yard waste at that site. The yard waste site proposed on this lot would be 4 acres. The current site in Hugo is roughly 2 acres, so it's much larger. The new city street would be terminated at the northern border of the proposed county lot to service the city-owned parcel for any future needs that the city would have. And then the county is going to bring in sewer and water utilities from the north. They're located now at the corner of Highway 61 and County Road 50, and those would run through the city-owned parcel to get to our site. Before we talk about the schedule, I do want to mention here that the project manager for this project is Joe Welter. He would be delivering this presentation, but he is out of town at a conference, so I got delegated instead. Joe will be bringing this project through to the completion for the county. Our anticipated schedule for this project, if the city council and county board both approve the agreement before you today, is to start construction yet this fall after Labor Day. If we hit all our approval milestones as planned, we anticipate opening the building and the operations in the fall of 2024. Before we close, I would like to thank the mayor and the city council for their considerations on this agreement and project. I would like to thank our Washington County Board for their support and leadership, especially Commissioner Miron. And lastly, I would like to thank the City of Forest Lake staff for the great partnership that has been formed, including Patrick Casey, Abby Whitman, Dave Adams, and Ryan Goodman. This has been a very positive and extremely productive experience with this great team, so really want to thank them as well. And with that, I would be happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you so much. Council, questions that we may have?
I guess the question would be to Dave. You've been involved with this all along. How's this gonna help us, Dave, as a City of Forest Lake?
It'll get us out of the compost business for one, which should be super helpful. It's a drain on our staff in the spring and the fall. They're gonna be doing about the same thing as transferring everything out, but they won't be using county employees. They'll be contracted where we just can't, as a city, can't afford to do that, so. That will be the biggest thing, just in staff time. I mean, it'll still be offered. It'll be about a couple 100 feet to the south of where we're at, so it doesn't really change locations. I know in the past, there's kind of pushback of going down to 180th and closing ours and that distance, but this will be basically in the exact spot with a controlled intersection. I know you want to say it a lot, but I'm surprised we haven't had an accident there with people taking that left-hand turn off of 61. You know, there's no bypass lane, no turn lane, anything going into that current site, so
Right.
I think it'll improve safety. And the land swap gives them a perfect spot for them right off of Headwaters, plus then gives us more acreage to stay out of the fly zone for public works as well. So it's a good swap of land for what we're both gonna use it for.
How does the planned acreage for the Yardway site on the county site, how does that compare to the size of what we have today? Are we getting bigger? Are we making a smaller footprint? About the same? Do you have an estimate?
You know what that acreage difference is?
It is, I think the parcel that the county would be getting is larger, but I do know that there's a significant wetlands on that as well that cannot be used for anything other than the wetlands.
Is the plan, though, same services around kind of type of materials that are accepted? Is the experience for residents similar to what they're experiencing today?
Yep, we don't offer wood chips or compost. Washington County will not either, but they will have a one-stop shop where you can bring, food waste and recyclables and hazardous waste and compost all at once. We're now driving either waiting for the cleanup days at the transit center a couple times a month or a couple times a year, and then otherwise driving all the way to Cottage Grove. So, it's a huge benefit just to the residents to have something like that year-round, to be able to bring that. It'll save our ditches too of TVs and whatnot that end up there, so.
Maybe we can keep a couple out of the ditch?
Yes,
That
yes,
kinda,
we might see a bonus on our 30-year dumpster getting filled up.
Mayor Bain, the size of the future yard waste drop-off site would be about 4 acres. Ours right now is a little less than 2. So just for scale.
Thank you. This has been a discussion over a number of years, and, you know, as Dave alluded to, we have struggled with just the logistics and economics of continuing to provide this service. However, we've also heard from residents that it's, you know, very important, and the proximity is very important, so continuing to offer this service is something we've heard that folks want. We also, though, hear of people making the trip to Woodbury for the additional items, and so having that option here in Forest Lake, I think, is a
Huge.
great amenity.
Yeah,
And it also just happens to relate to what we may be doing related to a future public works facility, and there's some other, you know, related adjacent city projects that maybe kind of make this a nice campus plan. So I'm happy to support this evening, but any other questions?
I
Go
have a
ahead.
question, I don't know if it would be to the city or not, but who pays for the expense of that additional road, or the additional road that goes east of 61 into the site? Is that city or is that county?
So that is,
Go ahead. Or the county's will build it up to the property line, and then it'll get turned over to us as a city street. So that picture where their driveway comes into their site, that'll be Washington County's, but the road coming off of Headwaters all the way up to the property line will turn into a city street. It'll get dedicated back to right away.
Great.
Good question. Any other questions? Looking for approval for resolution 6/12/2304, if anyone's ready.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 6/12/2304, approving the cooperative agreement with Washington County and authorizing the mayor and city attorney and city clerk to sign.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. Thank you for being here.
thank you.
Always nice to see you, Commissioner. Okay. We will move on to our next agenda item this evening, which is item 7C, Resolution 6/12/2302, which is Interlochen Avenue Street right-of-way vacation. We do have a public hearing scheduled on this topic. If that is what you are interested in speaking on this evening, we will have Abby present. We'll have some initial questions from council, and then we'll open up the public hearing to bring back to council for final consideration. And Abby, we're ready whenever you are.
Thank you, Mayor Bain, members of the council. The city has received a petition from neighbors in the Kings Forest Hills neighborhood. Karen, you could put up just my screen really quick. I'm sure you're not all the most. Just really
Oh,
quick.
sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Still stuck on the podium. There you go.
There we go. For folks that aren't familiar with that neighborhood, that is just off the north side of the lake in between First and Second Lake. It was a property that was platted in 1927, and as part of that plat, we've got an Interlochen Avenue that kind of runs through the neighborhood that's never been developed. City code essentially, or state law essentially even defines that you need to find that there's no public purpose, there's no relationship to the existing right-of-way, it's consistent with no inconsistencies with the comp plan. This is a right-of-way that has never been used by the city. It has not been developed. Over the years, different neighbors have asked this very same thing, but there really hasn't been that momentum through the neighborhood to really get all of the neighborhood on board with the potential vacation. Now that we have that, staff does believe that there is a public purpose in vacating this right-of-way and making that right-of-way contingent or contiguous with those adjacent properties. So before you tonight is a consideration of a resolution vacating that public street right-of-way, and staff would recommend the council move to approve resolution 06-122302, vacating a public street right-of-way located within the city of Forest Lake, Minnesota. I am available if you have any questions through the public hearing process or discussion period.
Thank you, Abby. Can you clarify, when was the right-of-way put in place?
1927, so almost 100.
1927?
1927, it's almost
I
100
remember it
years
well.
old.
You voted on it?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Generally speaking, you know, a lot of times we don't want to advocate for the disposition of public land. There might be a purpose someday. There might be a road to go through there, a trail, Utilities, this is one, we've recently done all the roadway utility work in the area. We've really found that there isn't a public benefit. It actually would really well serve that neighborhood. I understand that there are some drainage concerns, and this additional land area could really help those neighbors, help to their benefits, so.
In your presentation, did you speak to, or did I hear you mention that it seems that there is a neighborhood kind of spirit of support? I know we'll probably hear more of that in the public or in the open.
Yes, as part of the application that was submitted by the McGrath property, they did also submit a petition with the property owners signing on to the petition.
Very good. And if I missed that in the packet, my apologies. This was a little bit of a large packet.
It was a very large packet.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin.
And just one more question. Have you had any opposition?
No opposition, no
Expressed?
public comment to date. We did notify of this public hearing 10 days in advance of the meeting. Nobody has reached out to city staff that I'm aware of.
Understood. Very good. Any other questions of Abby before we open up the public hearing? Hearing none. All right, with that, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak on this topic, you are welcome to do so. Please join us at the podium. Is there anybody that would like to speak at the public hearing? I'm seeing some heads shake. All right. Not seeing anyone come forward, we'll close public hearing and bring the consideration back to council. Okay, council, the floor is yours. Any follow-up questions, considerations?
No, as long as they're not heating up the tar and feathers, we can probably move forward with this.
Yeah, we get asked this question routinely, so I'm just always hesitant to move forward and to just make sure that we've had the right process to ensure that there is consensus. But if a right-of-way that was created 100 years ago isn't needed anymore, then let's fix it. So it seems like that's
Madam Mayor, I make a
straightforward.
motion that we adopt resolution 06-12-23-02, resolution vacating a public street right-of-way located within the city of Forest Lake, Minnesota.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to 7D, consideration of resolution 6/12/2303, 1190 11th Street Southeast, the Forest Hills United Methodist Church Plan Unit Development, and we're continuing on with the IB show this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Bay and members of the council. Forest Hills United Methodist Church would like to build an accessory structure on their property that is in the single-family zoned neighborhood. Just as to inform the council, it is an institutional facility, and places of worship in single-family residential zoning district do require a conditional use permit. There is no conditional use permit on file for the property. It's likely probably the church is just a part of a former township lands, and we inherited it when it came into the city. I don't know that to be true, but part of the request was for a conditional use permit, which the Planning Commission did approve at their, I think, May 24th meeting. Another little quirk in our code is it does indicate that whenever you have more than one building on a place of worship, a property for a place of worship, they do require a planned unit development. So as part of the May 24th Planning Commission hearing, they also did consider a planned unit development recommendation. As part of that planned unit development, the site is really what they're looking to do is propose a garage and pavilion structure across from their parking lot, well within its setbacks, well away from adjacent properties, and designed to really kind of get the look and feel of the adjacent building. So the garage would be just used for storage, and they'd have this kind of open covered pavilion area that they would be able to offer outside services, but also be available for community rentals or those sorts of things. Planned unit developments, you have the right to vary or adjust the city code. There's two ways that they are asking for deviations. One, In the single-family residential district, we say no accessory structure can be greater than 3,000 square feet. They are proposing a 3,750 square foot structure. Now, that being said, that's the entire structure. That's the garage space plus that open pavilion. The mass and the bulk that would be associated with another 3,000 square foot structure here is reduced some just because of that open air feel with the building. The other one is they are proposing pole style construction. So we've kind of gone through the code quite a bit to understand our code limitations with pole style construction. This is identified as part of the architectural standards for the city. And therefore, we don't believe that it's necessarily the type of construction of pole style building, but rather what those exterior materials are made of. The church is really designed this structure to be very respectful, not only of the site to match their existing building, but also that residential neighborhood. Been very accommodating in changing some of their material design so that they, like the lap siding, kind of one of those materials that very much is indicative of a residential neighborhood. Overall, when it comes to the PUD deviations, both staff and the Planning Commission think that these are very reasonable deviations from the city code. So generally speaking, the request is in conformance to the comp plan. There's no issues with the zoning code. Both the Planning Commission and City Council, or both Planning Commission and staff do recommend approval. We've drafted a resolution for your formal consideration of the final planned unit development for the property. I do want to note that in addition to that May 24th public hearing with the Planning Commission, the city also participated in a landowner neighborhood meeting. We let them host it here. That occurred on May 12th. We've notified the neighborhood. Nobody showed up to that neighborhood meeting. Nobody showed up to the public hearing. I think everyone is in support of this. So therefore, we would recommend that you move to approve resolutions 06122303, approving the final planned unit development for the property located at 1790 11th Street Southeast.
Thank you, Abby. No public hearing on this topic this evening. We can just jump right to council discussion. Council, the floor is yours. Any questions you may have for Abby or of the project?
Maybe I'm just curious, underneath the open air space, do you know what the plan is for the ground? Is it gonna be just grass?
No, it'll be concrete.
Concrete for the whole
Yep.
thing?
And point of clarification related to parking, did the project trigger any additional parking requirements, or are they able to?
It did not, because we do have provisions for allowing for shared parking on the site. Additionally, because that building is serving as storage, it's actually accommodating more parking on the site. So there was no trigger for threshold for additional parking.
Understood. I appreciate the applicants working with the city on design standards on a building that I think meets a nice, a nice kind of threshold of, yes, it's storage and a pavilion space, but they did some design upgrades that make it match more of the neighborhood that it's in, so I appreciate that. Any other questions,
I
considerations?
think it's pretty straightforward, really. I mean, if there's no opposition to it in the neighborhood,
Yeah, I think it'll be a nice addition.
yeah, so.
Very good.
I agree. With that, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 6/12/2303, resolution approving final planned unit development for Forest Hills United Methodist Church.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Oppose? And motion carries. Our next item this evening is consideration of ordinance 724, a zoning text amendment for wetland baking. And Abby.
Thank you, Mayor Bay and members of the council. As the city council is aware, earlier this year, both the city council, the planning commission has held many different workshop discussions, and staff has sought direction for the formulation of an ordinance pertaining to wetland banking. About a year ago tomorrow, we enacted a moratorium to give us a moment to study wetland banking to determine whether or not that was something that was allowed in our code, and if it wasn't allowed in our code, if we wanted to allow it in our code, and if we wanted to allow it in our code, where we would like to allow wetland banking. A series of public meetings has occurred. Most recently, our Planning Commission held a public hearing on April 26th regarding this. At that time, the Planning Commission tabled consideration of the ordinance. They asked staff to continue to work with the local watersheds, other interested agencies, to fine tune any ordinances that would come back before the city. So since during that time, staff worked with both of our watershed districts, the Board of Water and Soil Resources and our local conservation district in the review and of their comments and concerns, but also the development of a final draft ordinance that was presented to the Planning Commission at their last meeting. At that last meeting, because of the circumstances where we're in with wetland banking, staff, just the same as presenting to you this evening, have brought forth 2 different ordinances for city consideration. One ordinance would allow for wetland banking under certain circumstances in the Conservancy zoning district. Our Conservancy zoning district is designed to protect our natural areas. It's a very logical fit for wetland banking, and if the council was favorable to this, any property owner could petition to rezone their property to the Conservancy zoning district. The other ordinance that's before you tonight is a ban on wetland banking within the city. This is actually both what the staff and Planning Commission have recommended approval of. And the primary drivers for this are there's a multi-number of factors. We are currently we are currently known to be 35% water. That doesn't include any additional wetland areas that are found during wetland delineations. And so the encouragement of additional wetland acreage is concerning. Now, some would argue this ordinance and wetland banking doesn't always create wetland acres. And that's true, but it can. People can take high and dry land with wetland banking, and they could end up making new wetlands. The ordinance as written, the one that would allow for wetland banking, explicitly prohibits the creation of new wetlands. It would only allow wetland banking by restoration, enhancement, and preservation. Thank you, Amanda. But even that, staff is concerned that there is a monetization of wetland banking and that the allowance of wetland banking within Forest Lake, though could serve our local development community, would also be of a great interest to a wide development community. And there is concern that some of the wetlands within Forest Lake would end up becoming a benefit to outside development community versus the local community. So before you tonight, like I said, is 2 ordinances. I note nothing in either of the ordinance would create would prohibit a property owner from creating, enhancing, preserving, or restoring wetlands on their property. People will still be able to do that. We're just saying you can't make money doing it. Or staff and the Planning Commission are recommending that if we prohibit it, we just wouldn't be able to make money. And then nothing in either ordinance would prohibit a developer from mitigating wetland impacts anywhere within the community. So if you're a developer and you end up having an impact in the community, you can mitigate that impact somewhere in the community. We did get a couple comments since the packet went out to you. I think both of them were emailed to you. One was from, I think her name was Ruth. Let me just a quick second. Got it close by. She was really concerned about filling of wetlands. And I don't know if that education was there, that this ordinance doesn't contemplate filling wetlands. The other one is from Comfort Lake Forest Lake's president, Stephen Schmaltz. He has submitted 2 comments now. Both of them suggest that there are concerns with the education of what wetland banking is within the community, the potential impact to the public, and the additional, cost-benefit analysis for doing projects. But that was also included. Both of those can be read into the record if you'd like me to. But I wanted to at least note that on the record. So again, 2 ordinances before you. One to either deny wetland banking or another to approve. And certainly can help you work through those. I also have the motions that I can put up on the board if you'd like me to. So I'm here if you have any questions for me. Otherwise, I do believe we notified this as a public hearing, and the council should probably take comment and discuss.
Thank you, Abby. Let's take a initial first round of questions to Abby and then open up the public hearing. Is there any initial questions?
I guess I have a question. I mean, Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District seems to have a consistent concern about this idea. So I'm just curious, can you speak a little bit to the dynamics of those conversations that happen between staff and the district?
Sure.
Why does there still seem to be this?
The district's, so Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District's primary purpose is to help protect the Comfort Lake Forest Lake watershed. They are water resource oriented people, and their goals and their policies are designed to protect water resources. From a community development perspective, a planning and zoning perspective, we have to look at all of our resources. So we're not just looking at our water resources. We're not saying wetlands aren't important, and we're not saying wetlands shouldn't be protected. We're saying we're concerned with the monetization of the protection of our wetlands. We also need to protect our land. We are a community that does have land available for development, but it is very pockmarked with the wetland areas. And so what is that impact on our future development? We don't know right now. So I think one of the challenges that we've had, and it's been a very cordial relationship with staff at the Watershed District, they have one set of goals and we have another set of goals. We just have to think of a lot more things than necessarily just the water resources or the natural resources of the watershed.
Well, some of the projects that they've worked on has been restoring wetlands. You know,
Yep.
they're working on a pretty significant project off on 97. A ban that we're considering, correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't stop that, correct?
No.
Do they understand that? That it
They
wouldn't
do
stop that?
understand that. So our watershed districts are interested in wetland banking because of the monetization factor. You can create wetland banks, create new acreage, or you can take historic wetlands, restore them, bank them, and now you've got a potential revenue source for that organization. And so that is something that I think some watershed districts look at and say that is a benefit to the public of being able to have that revenue source. We understand that that revenue source is available. We have lands. The city of Forest Lake owns Bixby Park. It's a massive wetland. We could restore that, we could bank that, and we could have our own revenue source. We think right now some of those public considerations of what could happen in the unknown just don't weigh out that potential.
Go ahead, Councilmember Husnick.
I don't know why they're opposed to this, banning it, because the dirty little secret here is that if you have wetland banking in place, you can buy acreage from this bank in order to destroy a wetland over here. That's basically what it's all about. And so I don't think there's anybody on this board that's against the wetlands. We're here to protect our wetlands. And that's why I'm not sure why the watershed district is even in favor of continuing on with this wetland banking. And so just based on that, to me, it doesn't make sense. And especially when the fact that you're not creating another wetland to offset the one that you just destroyed, you're just enhancing an existing wetland. Okay, then number two, who pays for the ongoing maintenance that takes place after this is in place? You know, somebody's gonna grab the money and be gone, and then the city of Forest Lake's gonna be stuck with the maintenance that's continuing by law. We have to take care of that. Also, why would they continue to pay taxes on that property? They could just walk away, be done with it, tax title. There's no way to ever restore that again. And so I'm a pretty hard no on this wetland banking thing within the city of Forest Lake because of that. And when you talk about us being 35% wet here, I don't see any reason to jeopardize what developable land that we have. So that's just my opinion, and I'm gonna stick to it.
Question, under the option of allowing it under the Conservancy District, is the designation of wetlands still a permanent consideration? And it is a permanent consideration? Okay.
Yeah, those lands, Councilmember Husnick pointed out something I didn't mention, but I think I've mentioned before to the council, that when a wetland bank is established and it's certified, the land is now forever going to be used for that bank. It's losing a lot of land value, and it is forever held in conservancy with an easement. And so that's what its life is for the rest of its life. Now, that being said, maybe we, yeah, anyways.
We just need to know all the facts, though. That's what we're looking for, all the facts.
Are there any other questions of Abby? And then I do want to open the public hearing before we get too far into conclusions, but any other questions or clarifying
I
points?
just
Go
have
ahead.
a couple comments. I guess you made the comment of our land. It really isn't our land. It's the property owner's land. And I have a concern with us putting more restrictions on landowners than we already have on them. So that's a concern. The other part of it is that we kind of are an outlier here, where I don't think there's any other cities in the area that are doing this. This seems like a real hard no, or we're just, outlawing these things. And so that's our two different concerns for me. But I'm not, I'm open to hear other opinions.
Understood. Do you want to speak to other municipalities? in the
There
consideration?
are no other local jurisdictions in the metro area that are considering it, no.
Good to know.
And the land is still available for sale if they decide to do that through the development process. And they wouldn't get any more for that land if they were sold it to, if somebody's gonna develop it into wetland banking, than they would if they're gonna sell it to a developer for whatever type buildings, whatever the zoning happens to be. And so, somebody's gonna have to convince me otherwise.
Understood. Understood. Let's open a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this topic? Happy to have you join us at the podium, and let's open up public hearing now. Keep public hearing open for a moment here. Anyone changing their mind, like to speak? All right, not seeing anyone come forward, we'll close public hearing and bring consideration back to council. Council, consideration, thoughts?
I think the planning commission had it right. I know that in the letter from the watershed district, they were kind of commented the fact that they thought there was maybe some misunderstanding and all that on the planning commission's part. I didn't see it. I'm not sure. I think they had all the information. And the other thing too about our planning commission, they're an experienced bunch. They've been around here a long time and been serving the city for a long time, most of them. And so, I really do think that they got it right. So, and you guys already heard my opinion on it, so.
Councilmember Erickson?
Just point of clarification, Abby, did I understand you correctly that if there's a local developer that comes across wetland on their site, that they can develop wetlands somewhere else in the city to offset that? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, we would allow for them to mitigate. They'd have to go through proper permitting channels through.
There's an avenue.
If they made their request and it got through the local TEP panel, the technical evaluation panel in that respective watershed district, yes, we would allow them to do that elsewhere in the city.
Otherwise, their option is to find a wetland, a bank to buy it from.
Correct.
Is this, if I remember correctly, have we had multiple inquiries on this, or are we just talking about this one property south of town down by 180th that's really spurred this whole thing on?
The one property, and as a reminder, it is 360 contiguous acres, is the one property that we know of that we've received an inquiry, and that was the initiation of the moratorium. Those are discussions that occurred right as I was coming on board, and Nathan was here at the time, and the moratorium was adopted shortly after I had started. I don't know if additional inquiries have come through like Bolton and Mink or through Ryan, and we've kind of just said, we've got a moratorium going on. I haven't been tracking that.
I'd be curious to know, like, what other decisions the cities had made in the past. Similar to, I think Scandia put a moratorium on solar panels because there were so many requests. And here we are looking at, we've gotten one formal request, and we're looking to put a ban on something. That's just a bit concerning for me. And I guess follow-up question then, can this be changed? If we find out that we're not getting the inquiries that we think we are, can this be reverted back?
Oh, yeah, anybody can petition to change the zoning code. So let's just say tonight we enacted the ordinance that outright prohibited it, and there is a landowner that has multiple, wetlands or contiguous lands. They can petition to change the code, and we could go right back through this process again. Or the city, the council, the planning commission could initiate this, let's say in 5 years. We're running low on our own wetland credits, and we need, to, do something. We can always revisit this in the future.
Your question kind of gets at the heart of one of my concerns, is that we can change it back, right? We can lift and become less restrictive in the future. What makes me concerned, and I kind of keep coming back to this, I sound like a broken record, is the permanency nature of allowing it. That those projects that go in the ground when it's allowed, that's forever, and we can't change our mind. And I do appreciate, I think that, land management techniques and water management techniques, those things evolve, and if there becomes this hybrid, similar to what's proposed in a conservancy district option that in the future works and is agreeable and is something naturally we should do, we should reconsider. What makes me concerned is that until we know what that is, the decision to put in a wetland bank, again, is permanent and irreversible, and allowing it to be monetized creates incentive that we are aware of a project, but creates incentive for it to happen in other areas, and it's the irreversible of the allowance that makes me pause of, do we know enough and are we comfortable enough with the hybrid type approach, or where it could be allowed, that we have a long-term maintenance plan, we know what the decision criteria are going to be. I'm just not there yet. And, we've had a moratorium for a year to study. If the recommendation is to continue the ban, again, because I don't have assurances on some of those other things, I'm inclined to ban it for now. Again, we can always reconsider that decision.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
the other consideration I think we ought to be thinking about is what that section of land, if it was into this wetland banking, what would happen with any future Musaline or extending water or sewer or whatever the case may be to other projects around the area. And, we're up against our border. We've always had that area kind of set up for more commercial type work. So what would that do to our future planning? So I really have some very grave concerns about that. So.
I couldn't agree with you more, Sam, and the fact that even though it was one request, I think that's plenty for the staff and for this body to look into it and to put a moratorium on it and to question it. And the fact that it was 300+ acres of dry highland for development, and that's what we had planned, is concerning. And what you said, Madam Mayor, I am in favor of banning it. And what makes me, I guess, be in favor of it is the fact that it's an ordinance and you can always amend that, so.
How does it hurt us to go with the second option, allowing it in the conservancy district?
I mean, there's, I don't know that it's inherently hurting. This is why staff kind of is in this position of bringing you to, right? We're saying, please, we wouldn't recommend you do this, but we'd say, if you're gonna do this, this is the only scenario we would ever say would be okay in the conservancy district, not creating new wetland acres. Like, that is really important. It also gives a biconditional use permit. So it would give the city the potential right to review and interject ourselves in that review and development process. But to Commissioner, some of the counselors' points, it is a permanency thing. If somebody petitions to rezone land and it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, that's,
Yeah, but
That's
from
kind of a forever
tax-based
thing.
standpoint, I mean, it's not terribly valuable right now, is it?
what's that?
That land, is it, I mean, part of this is like, well, let's not lose our potential tax base.
I mean,
right?
let's just say, let's just say it was a 100-acre parcel that's in agricultural land right now, and that 100-acre parcel went from agricultural zone to conservancy zone. You're gonna lose all of the tax revenue. Not, I mean, you might get some peanuts, you might get like, $50 a year or something. I'd have to look, but your conservancy zoning district, it doesn't have developable land, and when land isn't developable, it doesn't have an assessed value the same as others. I can look to see what the existing tax rates are on some of our agricultural properties, and what we'd be getting on them right now.
So that's agricultural land that's in that conservancy district, is what you're saying?
So right now, they're agriculturally zoned, and if somebody wanted to wetland bait a lot of the land area that would be eligible, I'm gonna get off the mic just for a second.
Can you pull up the map?
Yeah, I can. I will. All of this is agriculturally zoned. So our
Yeah.
whole western quarter of the city is agriculturally zoned. So of that agricultural zone, it currently is assessed at a tax rate for, rural residential or,
But isn't the conservancy district the darker green?
then the darker green, yep.
That is the conservancy
That
district?
is the conservancy
So
district.
it's not the whole agriculture area you're just pointing out?
Well, what I'm saying though is those areas are gonna be those areas that are gonna be ripe for development of something, be that a wetland bank or some sort of urban development. We're an urban community, we're guiding those areas for urban development. So while this code, an ordinance says you can do it in the conservancy district, anybody can petition to rezone any property to conservancy, and as long as it's
Sure.
consistent with the comp plan. We really can't deny
You're
that.
saying that okay, so you're saying we can't deny it?
We really can't deny a rezoning if it's consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Got it, okay.
So if that were to happen, so say a party were to come forward in an area that isn't today a conservancy district, and they want to create a wetland bank, the step potentially could be to rezone to a conservancy district, and then this would allow them to create a wetland. Is that, there's a council approval in that allowance.
Surely we'd be able to say, if your intention is to rezone this to conservancy to create a wetland, that would be a reason for denial, would it not?
Council, Your Honor, Council, that would be a reason to approve, because Conservancy District, the idea is it's property that is going to be conserved in some capacity. Exactly as Abby said, if it matches our comp plan, or could be argued to match a comp plan, it would be difficult to find a non-arbitrary or capricious reason for denying the rezoning request. And then once it's rezoned as conservancy, we have the CUP that we put in there, so it's a conditional use, but conditional uses, you generally have to approve, you can just include conditions on them. And so that is staff's concern, is that a lot of our ag property, which we're hoping in, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years becomes developable land, would then go to this forever and ever and ever wetland bank.
I get the challenge. I just find it fascinating. We've got so many developable areas that have wetland
We don't though.
marked.
That is a challenge.
But I thought a lot of times where there's a development, there's wetland, right, that we have to work around, which makes it difficult.
Agree.
And so if that's the challenge we face, and we're telling developers, your only choice is to go buy wetland credits somewhere else because we don't want them here.
Well, you could
that-
develop it
you're
here.
right.
You could develop it here.
Council, that's inaccurate.
Okay.
A developer that is developing in the city of Forest Lake is able to do anything necessary to mitigate the wetlands on their site. So if I come in and I have 40 acres and I'm doing some sort of development on it, and I have 5 acres of wetlands, I need to fill those 5 acres. I have no idea what I'm doing that I would get that through the TEP panel, but let's just say that I can. I get to do whatever is necessary to mitigate those 5 acres. So if that's buying credits from a wetland bank that would be established, Rice Creek has a very large wetland bank, perhaps I'm there and I'd buy credits from them. Whatever. If I happen to find a little piece in our conservancy district that's a 5 acre, actually it has to be 10 because you're going 2 to 1, right? So a 10 acre wetland piece, I can buy that and I can make that my off-site wetland mitigation. The developer gets to do everything that they need to do to get their site developed. What we are trying to avoid is wetland banks are generally used by developers not developing in Forest Lake. They're developing maybe somewhere else in the state, maybe not even in the state, and they're trying to find a place where they can buy these credits to offset what they're doing in those communities. And what we're trying to do is say, well, that's not great, because now you're taking our land to do something, taking a property, city property, or city within the property. I completely understand what you're saying about property owner rights, but city within the property to offset something that has no value to our community, and you're stripping all of the value out of the 10 acres that sits in our community. I empathize. This is a complicated issue, and it does feel heavy-handed to use a complete ban. But absent something that changes in the Clean Water Act, or absent some other modifications that are beyond the control of this council, this is, in my humble opinion, the best way to protect future development in our city.
Yeah, because I'm concerned about the ongoing maintenance that's required by law once this takes place too. Not only are we not collecting any kind of tax base, but we're required to take care of the wetland. So who pays for that? We would end up getting stuck for it.
That's not completely accurate. The landowner would be obligated to do the future maintenance. But it could be argued that if the landowner defaults and doesn't pay their taxes and the property goes tax forfeit, then that's gonna end up in the public's realm
And that has
to
happened
take
before.
care of.
That has happened in the past.
We've spent a lot of time, talking to the community, going through the comprehensive plan process, going through different development process, our strategic plan. I've never heard anyone say, you know what we need in Forest Lake, we need more wetland. Like, it's always been the opposite conversation, and we're always dancing around the map and trying to, working on project plans. And I think about all of the gyrations that Chestnut Creek went through on trying to get, developable sites within that challenging property. And so something that monetizes the creation of more and that forever is, I think, challenging. And if there is, in the future, some option that is a good option that, kind of addresses some of these concerns, I would like to reverse course, and let's always, keep an eye on what makes sense. But it's the forever nature that just really has me still challenged. Any other points of feedback? Staff has given us 2 options in our packet. The first option is the first option is to deny in total, and that would be, the appropriate action would be to consider ordinance enacting Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 153, Section 309 Wetland Banks, or option 2 would be to approve with the Conservancy District, and it's the second portion that's on our screen.
Madam
Okay,
Mayor,
go ahead.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the ordinance enacting Title 15 Land Usage Chapter 153, Section 309, Wetland Banks.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion? Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Nay.
And motion carries. Thank you. And also, really, thank you to the Planning Commission, who's done a lot of work on this topic, and should have mentioned that earlier. I really appreciate their consideration. Okay, we can move on to our next agenda item, which is Agenda 7F. Consideration for Shadow Creek Estates, property at 6150 202nd Street North. Abby.
Oh, is it me? Thank you, Mayor Bain. Members of the council. So first I want to note the materials that went out to you last week. Note staff would recommend tabling this item due to an unpublished public hearing. Since I sent those materials out, legal counsel has advised we do not need that public hearing. So you might want to pay a little attention, just because I am going to ask you to take action on this tonight. That is not to table, but we'll walk through it. I think this one is, it's easier than wetland banking. We'll say that, right? So Todd Christensen of Elmcrest LLC intends to develop the Shadow Creek Estates. It's a mixed-use development that would preserve the existing farm site stables and produce 46-unit single-family attached townhomes to the north. So I think you've seen some concept plans, some different projects over the years on this, and nothing has really materialized. The developer has kind of separated the east and the west from the site somewhat to really look at these independently. Because of that creek running through the site, this east side operates in a whole different way than the west side operates. So under this new development plan, that whole southern portion south of the creek would end up remaining as is. Shadow Creek Stables would continue to operate exactly as it's been doing, and that is really well supported in our comp plan. We want to preserve those agrarian businesses and those agrarian roots where we can, and this is one of those times. Up in that northeast corner, though, we'd be looking at doing that townhome development. There would be a single cul-de-sac or a single T road coming in and out that would come off of Goodview. No longer would the site connect through to 202nd County Road 50. The plans before you show that that would be a private road. We've discussed with the developer, even the planning commission, we've all said, no, that would be a public road. We need to maybe make some adjustments to that public road in the future, but that's one of the things that we'd be looking at. So when we're looking at our planned unit, tonight we're looking at a comp plan amendment, a planned unit development, a preliminary plat, and a rezoning. The comp plan guides this property for high density, so 15 to 20 units per acre. Currently, the development, when we're taking out that stable site, it really, oh, Karen, would you? Thank you, Dave. Would you please? I'm going to go back really quick. This is what I was showing you earlier when I said that the west half was out of the development site. So here's that creek running through. Shadow Creek Stables is going to be preserved. We'll end up with a new road coming off of Goodview, but that road will no longer go through to 202nd Street. So hopefully we're all up to date now and where I was, everything I was looking at least. The density for this portion of the development is only about 6 to 7 units per acre. I think we got it up to a little over 7 now. Whereas that western side of the property has 23, almost 24 units per acre. And so one of the things that really needs to happen is a transfer of some of the density from that west side that the landowner owns to the east-northeast side. Contrary to the Planning Commission, we do need to end up following through with a comprehensive plan amendment on that. Again, legal counsel has helped directed on the processing of some of these documents that we would need to kind of memorialize how we do that density transfer from the west side. So we were from the east side to the west side. So we were guiding this for high density residential. And because we've got that single family here and we've got highway along through here, this townhome development at a little bit lower density really helps serve as that buffer between what is going to anticipated to be highway development in the future. And so overall, this is, when you look at the properties that the developer owns, this is consistent with the comp plan if we go through a comp plan amendment process. When it comes to the zoning code, again, that preservation of that hobby farm, that's a legal non-conforming use. That means it's allowed to stay. It's allowed to stay in perpetuity. And our comp plan says, let's keep it in perpetuity. And so the landowner wants to keep it there. He does actually live on site. The single-family attached would all have 4 to 6 units per building, just a little bit more, a little bit less. Looks like we might end up with a 3-unit building on the south because these are anticipated wetland impacts. The developer is working through its Rice Creek Watershed District approvals right now. Overall, in the PUD analysis, there was just a couple things that the developer was seeking. Front yard setback of 20 feet to the back of curb, that would end up providing, though, 25 feet to the building itself. A fence height of 7 feet instead of 6 feet, and that would be a privacy fence on that north side shared with those single-family residential property owners. And then that future ownership and maintenance of the road, even though the road will be public because of the limitations through there, as part of the development agreement, we would require that snow removal would be a responsibility of the HOA in the future. Owner is favorable to that as well. Additionally, they do intend to meet our roadway standards for the width of this road. So overall, again, like I said, that MXR3 is what we would propose to proposing to rezone this to. It's a great transition from that single family to that higher density that we're gonna see eventually along that highway. Either higher density or some mixed use. Some of those engineering comments, watershed district coordinations review required, and we'll need trail easements, and we'll need driveway separations, and we're gonna need easements for utilities. A lot of that is still to come, and as a part of the conditions that were included in the staff report. Over my year here, I think we've had a number of neighborhood meetings, at least 2 neighborhood meetings. The Planning Commission's held at least 2 meetings. This is a redesign of a plan we all saw like last fall. Overall, this last neighborhood meeting and the Planning Commission public hearing, we've had very little comment. I don't think necessarily the neighborhood is worn out. I think the neighborhood has found that this is probably better than a high-density apartment building behind some of these single-family. And as much as we thought that it'd be good to put single-family here once, it really just doesn't fit with the comp plan. And so overall, it's received more public support than some of the other plans along here. Again, this is not a hearing tonight. Although I haven't prepared any items for you, staff would make recommendations to approve the comprehensive plan amendment with conditions. And that condition is that it would be approved by the Met Council by the time of final plat. Approve the ordinance map amendment with the condition it wouldn't be effective till the time of final plat. Approve the preliminary planned unit development with the condition that the density transfer with the adjacent property would occur prior to final plat. And that the preliminary plat would be approved with conditions as recommended by staff and the Planning Commission, and all of those to be brought back before the City Council in resolution ordinance format memorializing your decision. I do have on the dais tonight for you cheat sheets if you hadn't already found those. Were all the handfuls of things we had going on, but there is 4 different actions there for you, and I can pull them up for you as well. Do you have any questions for me?
Logistics question, would you expect that the resolution that comes back on these items is just a consent agenda item, just
Yes.
memorializing it in a resolution? There's not additional information that's expected?
No,
Okay.
there is one ordinance for the rezoning. We'd have to do just the 10-day notice that it would go out this week. And then I would believe that all of these would be on the consent agenda at your next meeting.
And to be clear, I'm comfortable putting it on regular agenda, if that's what makes sense. I just wanted, I was using it more as a gauge of how final are we on.
And this isn't, I know it probably, especially for the 2 commissioner or counselors sitting on the ends, this isn't necessarily customary, but a lot of communities will do this. You'll take action, memorial final documents will be brought back. I did consult with Amanda to see if our legal counsel was comfortable with this. She is. You certainly can table it and we can bring back those formal documents. Tonight would just give at least that developer that assurance that they can keep moving forward with developing final civil plans and everything, so.
Understood. Should we take questions overall and then maybe individual motions for each of the 4 items for consideration? Any overall feedback or questions?
So I remember this came before us initially, so just to make sure I was understanding correctly, originally this was gonna be single family and then it was gonna move into townhomes and then apartments, correct?
It was going to be, it's guided in the comp plan as high density. And the developer came in and said, hey, I really like this idea of kind of feathering the density, right? Single-family townhomes, high density. I said, you know what, I really like that too. I think it's a lot more palatable. I understand what we have in a comp plan. The tricky part was managing the density. The landowner doesn't intend to own the high-density land that's adjacent to Highway 61. And so really separating these out and trying to find a density that kind of fit there, but that wasn't too intrusive with the neighborhood, was really what ended up coming. The Planning Commission also had said, you need to get more density in here because you guys have heard this from me, our comp plan requires us to have greater density in some areas. So our thought is a comprehensive plan amendment would help keep a little bit higher density from that single family in that northern corner and really push that density to those two highways.
Any other questions, comments?
Is there a turnaround on these streets? I mean, is it gonna be okay for garbage trucks and fire trucks to get in there now?
A fire truck, yes. So both of them would end up using that hammerhead design. It has been approved by our fire chief. We didn't check with the trash company, but generally if our fire trucks can get in and out, the trash trucks can too.
Council, we have for your consideration 4 different actions. I'll kick us off unless, I don't want to cut off discussion if there's further discussion. For ready for action, I'll kick us off by moving that council approve the Shadow Creek's Estate Comprehensive Plan Amendment with the condition it is approved by Met Council by the time of final plat, and to direct staff to bring back a resolution memorializing council's action. Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries.
Mayor, being members of the council, in this next motion, it says to bring back a resolution that would be an ordinance memorializing the council's action.
Very good. I'll keep us rolling with a motion to approve Shadow Creek Estates zoning ordinance map amendment with the condition it will not become effective until the time of final plat approval, and to bring back an ordinance memorializing council's action. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Oppose? Motion carries. I'll continue on here. Move to approve the Shadow Creek Estates preliminary planned unit with the condition the density transfer with the adjacent property will occur prior to the final plat approval, and direct staff to bring back a resolution memorializing council's action.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. And last but not least, I move to approve Shadow Creek Estates preliminary plat with conditions as recommended by staff and the Planning Commission, and to direct staff to bring back a resolution memorializing council's action. Is there a
Second.
Motion and a second. All those, any discussion? I will just say this project has been under consideration for a very, very long time. It is great to see it moving forward. I know the property owner has done a lot of work to get it to this point, and I appreciate also the neighborhood's concerns, and I think we've got a good buffer plan in place, so I'm happy to support this evening. With that, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. That brings us to the end of our planned action agenda this evening. We do have one quick item for discussion purposes, discussion of the 2024 budget calendar, which I think, Kevin, you're going to tell us we're going to start tomorrow. Is that about right?
Yes. Mayor Bain and council members, yes, this in front of you is just an outline of where we're looking at for our planned meeting dates for what they're going to look like going through the rest of the year. I know you've gotten a lot of budget items already put in front of you, which is, in my experience, it's great to get these budget conversations rolling as early as we can, this way we have plenty of time to look at and get all the information we need. So next planned budget would be at the workshop in July. That's where we would look at the long-term capital plan update, just with looking at all the success that the city had with the bonding bills and updating those plans with that worked into it, is to provide an update on how that looks, and then also provide an update on the long-term plan for the water, sewer, and surface water management funds. We haven't presented those yet, so those would be in there as well, not only looking at what the 2024 budget would be, but then the capital plan for those and any rate structure changes or suggestions that we have at that point as well. From there would be August, which has been consistent, have our workshop where we would wrap everything together, bring in the general fund presentation and proposal for what staff would be recommending there, along with anything that council has asked to see as far as different requests you would like to see in that 2024 budget, cost estimates and how that affects that, the general fund there. And then in September, just reserve the workshop for any updates that we have as far as what comes out of that meeting in August or any of the plans in July. As by September 30th, we are required to submit to Washington County our preliminary tax levy. So really by that workshop in September, seeing what the council would like in there, where we want to set that preliminary levy, just for Councilmember Roberts and Councilmember Erickson. This is where we set the preliminary tax levy. At this meeting, we can set the tax levy at a certain amount, and we cannot approve a levy higher than that when we require the final certification by the end of the year. So we can certify a levy, we can't increase it, but we can certainly decrease it come the end of the year. And then from there, depending where we're at with the budget, we would hold any workshops needed in October and November. And then at the first meeting in December is when we usually approve the tax levy and the budgets for 2024. We'd like to do it at this meeting, just depending, because history shows that the second meeting in December is usually canceled. That's with the holidays, but if something does come up, we can always have a meeting where we can approve later in December if we need to, but this is just the schedule that we are planning to follow for the rest of the year. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have on this or anything else concerning the budget.
Thank you, Kevin. Questions on process? Kevin, I know there's a lot of moving pieces with consideration of the bonding bill, and in particular, the proximity of timing of Eureka Avenue. And so I think seeing that those updates in July will be fantastic. I would just say, council, as you're thinking about the information that we've seen so far, if you have thoughts on reprioritization or pace, or what does this mean? I think getting some of that feedback into Patrick and Kevin sooner rather than later would be great. We'll see their recommendation, but certainly an informed, some feedback from council between now and then. And I don't think you would dislike that, right?
No, if you have anything that you would like to see in there or any questions as we go, the sooner we have that, the better. It just gives us more time to prepare and present that budget, what you're looking for in there. We do, as the mayor said, we do have a lot of moving pieces with this budget. There's a lot of things that have been requested and a lot of things with the bonding bill and whatnot. And just our general other ones that's been proposed with, streets and parks. It's a good thing. There's a lot of things that we're looking at, so it's not a bad thing by any means, but just the sooner we can get ahead of the game and stay on top of it, it makes our planning go a lot smoother come the end. So that's what I said at the beginning, where we started this already and presented this much information already is a good thing, but we just need to keep that moving where now that we presented it, that's not stagnant. If there's any questions or follow-up you would like to see, whether that's at the June workshop or even just a discussion piece you want to see after any council meeting, we can certainly add that in as well. Or if it's just email communication with all of us too, that works as well.
Very good. Any other points of discussion? All right. Let's move into staff updates. We'll start with Karen.
Thank you, Councilmember, Mayor and council members. Just one comment. I received email from Washington County Elections Office, and they are proposing a new JPA agreement with them, which is pretty standard. And just taking a look at the agreement, the major difference that they have right now is, or major changes, that they are setting a cap or a limit on the number of residents in a precinct. So if you recall, the last elections, we did all of the, every 10 years you have to do redistricting. And so I believe at that time, a new district was created in the southern part of the city. We were well within the amount, so they're looking at a cap of 4,500 residents per precinct or per area. We are well within that. I believe each area that we have is already under 4,000, but as the city grows, that's something that we would maybe have to consider the next time we redistrict, is how many residents are in there, and do we have to maybe split that precinct again? So, yeah, so I'll take a look at that a little more thoroughly to see what this agreement is compared to what we currently have in place, but that was the major change.
Thank you. Dan?
Mayor, members of council, I have just one update tonight. Want to let council know that I have been appointed as the next city administrator for the city of Lindstrom, which means my last day with the city of Forest Lake will be July 5th. Do want to let council know that between now and my last day, I will be working to close out and prep all of my projects that I'm currently working on, whoever takes over. So I'm trying to leave a clean desk, or as clean as I possibly can. I do want to mention that it is definitely bittersweet leaving Forest Lake, but Lindstrom really is an opportunity that I could not pass up. I do want to thank the council for putting up with me over the past 9+ years and for giving me the opportunity to serve the residents of Forest Lake. While I am very excited for my new role in Lindstrom, I will definitely miss working with this community. So.
Thank you, Dan. Congratulations on the new role.
Yeah, thanks,
And fortunate for them, and we're, of course, sorry to see you go, but certainly understand the new opportunity, so congratulations. And this isn't your last council meeting, so we
No.
aren't going to do the official cake wake quite yet.
I will
Okay.
be I will not be at the workshop, but I will be at the last council meeting in June.
Members of the council, Mayor Bain, I think you get the regular updates from the city on Mondays. I think you get them on Mondays. So you might see some of the updates coming through. A couple of the highlights that I just wanted to let you and anybody who might be watching. Chuck Bulcom's digital billboard went live. I sent you all an email to let you know, and city is actively posting on that. Really exciting. He and Nanette with the chamber have also really looked at some small business advertising options that can really help promote those local businesses that might not have had the chance to get on a billboard in the future. So that was really exciting. Also met last week with representatives from Hugo, Lino Lakes, Anoka, and Washington counties to discuss I-35 corridor planning, and specifically the future development of Elmcrest Hornsby. It does look like this group will start to continually meet to really start to look at what type of options for development and corridor transportation planning we can do in this area. In addition to the county engineers, we also had both of the county economic development administrators there as well. So really starting to look at this kind of holistically from a lot of different angles, knowing that some of that development along that I-35 corridor is really kind of pushing us to look at that now. So. And then lastly, we are continuing to meet with the city of Columbus. We're actually meeting on Wednesday this week to talk about Eureka Avenue and kind of start getting that project at least moving forward. So,
Very good. Thank you, Abby. Amanda?
No updates tonight, Your Honor.
All right. Dave?
Weed harvester started cutting today, so fingers crossed we don't get any phone calls of the drifting weeds on the shore, but that started today and they'll be continuing through Labor Day.
Is that early?
Usually about the 12th through the 15th is when we start,
Okay.
so that should continue on through the summer. With the no rain, we went over 2.5 million gallons per day for water usage, so our average in the winters is about 900,000, so about 2.5 times that now. So it's, with no rain in sight, it'll just keep climbing. We're only in moderate drought, so if we ever get to that severe, we may have to do a watering ban like we did a couple of years ago, but we'll keep monitoring that. Every Thursday that drought map comes out, so we'll just keep monitoring that and see, but we really need some rain.
And that is the trigger, is the drought map?
Yep, once we get into, I think, extreme drought, then that triggers us to do a watering ban. We are already even odd right now. That's just by ordinance that we do every other day watering, but it would be an outright full ban, so I will keep you posted. Other than that, that's all I have tonight.
Might be well timed to do a reminder on the odd even. I know that that is maybe not well known, and I'd rather do that than, I know.
We can put that
getting
on
to
our
a ban
digital
is
boards.
a-
We have the hydrant flushing boards out right now. We can just have it scroll to that too, just to remind people. And then just kinda, that usually follows us around time with flushing, so you can add that for sure, and maybe add it to the weekend or the weekly mailer.
I can also put something out in the email blast at the end of the week as well as on the website.
Reminder's good. We're in sprinkling season.
Second quarter water bills come out in end of June, so that'll decrease the usage then too, once they realize how much the water they've been putting on the
That is
yard.
the other,
That
that
makes
is
a
the other
Sometimes that helps out
consideration.
too.
Yes.
That'll make a difference.
Kevin, anything for council this evening?
No updates unless you have questions for myself.
Congratulations on getting through audit hurdle. It's always a nice milestone. Well done.
Very nice, thank you.
Councilmember Roberts.
I just want to make one comment. I met with Dave and a property owner on a fence issue on, well, 205th, I guess, and there really was no resolution, but agreement that it's both on sides. The city back in the day put that fence, allowed that fence to go in the wrong place, and Dave's been good about working with them and trying to figure out a snow fence situation, so I appreciate Dave taking the time.
Excellent. Very good. Councilmember Valento.
Just the one update that Arts in the Park started last week, and so it's every Tuesday. Started last week, goes until the end of August, and for those that don't know, there's food trucks, live music, vendors, and last week there were a lot of people there, so I'll be there tomorrow.
New dock, expanded dock has been
Yes.
very well utilized this last couple of just weeks. It's nice, nice to see it's packed. Very good. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Councilmember Husnick.
I attended the Memorial Day service down at the park. Well attended, great speaker, and the weather was perfect that day, so it was well attended, and so I have no other updates besides that.
Very good. Councilmember Erickson.
No updates tonight.
All right. And no updates for me either. Just appreciate all of the good, hard work, and looking forward to summer season for us as always. Lots of, certainly summer fun, also lots of budget hard work. And so as we go into that season, I appreciate everyone's hard work and getting us to a good answer come September and again in December. With that, we are at the end of our planned agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.